Hi, I'm Jodie, a relationship and sex therapist based in Southern California, and today we are continuing the Love Island Season 8 reaction series with episode 30. If you remember from the last episode, we are picking up right after America's vote for who is the most compatible, and we ended up losing Corbin and Parmita at the end of the last episode. As a reminder, originally safe were Carl and Anaya, Trinity and Bryce, Melanie and Sincere, and Casey and TT. Well, actually, Kenzie and Dylan were also safe because even though they were also in the bottom, but they won the karaoke challenge. So it's going to be down to Corbin and Parmita or Zach and Kata. And so the Islanders had to choose and vote for the couple that they wanted to save. And only Casey and TT voted for Corbin and Parmita. We weren't really surprised by that. So they ended up going home. So we're picking up the pieces after this eviction or whatever we want to kind of call it after America's vote. We start off and we have Kata and Zach upset. It's very rare that we will see kind of like, even though Kata was originally a bombshell, but to see beginning couples in the bottom, it's really easy for them to start kind of spiraling a little bit. And again, I don't even know if I would even call it spiraling. I think it's legitimate insight and reflection that a person needs to have on like, why did it go this way? Zach and Kata were clearly like, why would we in the bottom? Does America hate us? What's going on here? You know, of course, they're just going to kind of go eventually with, oh, well, you know, no one cares. We know what we have. I mean, it's a classic kind of like defensive protection, state that a lot of people get into. My hypothesis is that majority of this is around Zach. We have been watching Zach kind of flounder a little bit, experience jealousy, make these little comments, and I could definitely understand why people kind of get the ick of like, I don't know about them. Parts of this are not feeling really good, even though other parts of their aspects or other aspects of their relationship are positive. They were able to go the highway, you had these other kind of things, but to be honest, I think Zach's insecurities are the main reason that they got voted in the bottom. Again, I'm not America, but that's what I would have voted off of if I had put them in the bottom. I'm always looking at like, hey, there's some things I really like about them, but that is the thing that feels like it's potentially gonna be like the thorn for them that could potentially cause a lot of damage or make their relationship not work out. In addition to maybe like the distance, but I don't think that's usually as much of something that's coming into consideration for these kind of votes. They would be a pretty long distance relationship, but again, I think we're more voting off of like what we're currently seeing in their relationship and just like relationship aspects overall. We actually had Melanie and Sincere who were surprised by it because this would have been out of any of more of the OG couples, one of the ones we would assume would be in the bottom out of all the drama they've had. Sincere being kind of one of the worst guys there behaviorally. But, for them, they were like, who were coming from much more of an unstable place, with Melanie definitely still questioning things after movie night and Casa ended, to kind of have a little bit of grounding and say, okay, maybe America does see something here. Maybe I haven't made all this up. Maybe there are people that are actually rooting for our relationship and we should be giving it a try. Again, we'll see what happens. Is that the best thing? Who knows? Dylan was processing why him and Kenzie were voted in the bottom. Again, Dylan has also been kind of going back and forth on a little bit of the insecurities around just Kenzie's behavior, who, in a lot of ways has been kind of the female Sincere, has definitely usually had two people kind of at the same time. Again, we're not saying that out of judgment, but more so it's an understandable response that a person's gonna have of like, is this something and, am I making a huge mistake here, right? None of us want it to look like an idiot or like we have egg on our face. Kind of like what had happened with Anaya when she waited for Casey, and one of the biggest things she was upset about was, I made the wrong decision. I should have chose Carl and I chose Casey. What did I just do? So I think a lot of people go through these processes because we're all afraid of being hurt and making mistakes. And I see this time and time again with my clients of, we're gonna keep choosing maybe not necessarily the wrong thing, but like the unhealthy thing or the thing that hasn't really worked out for us over and over and over and hoping for a different result. And it's not to say again that that's the wrong thing, but it is something that causes people a lot of pain over time. It's understandable that people are gonna question and be like, am I making a mistake here? Just to keep it interesting, the show gave the girls a secret challenge. I think they've done this on other ones too. Like, oh, it's like a secret mission where like get the guys to do things on this list and every girl's got an assignment kind of thing. Cute, but I don't really need it. Again, of course, you had certain things be assigned to people. They just kind of knew, oh, that's your strength. You could be able to do that. One thing that is coming up that I wanted to talk about, and I think this happens outside of the villa too, but definitely you see it in the villa, of like this process of, I don't even know what the right word would be, like being in a relationship with somebody. Maybe that's the correct term. Being committed, of like, now we have all of these different phases, right? They were even talking about it like, okay, we're talking, we're closed off, we're exclusive, we're girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever. And like all these different phases, and trying to clarify like what that means. It is very confusing. Again, like, you know, asking people like, what's difference between closed off and exclusive? For me, that sounds kind of like the same thing. And when these things kind of come up for people in the villa of like, well, you know, we don't know what things are gonna look like outside, and you know, if we're committing here, is that real? We don't even know what anything outside here looks like. Once, you know, the outside influences and things kind of get back in to our relationship, is this really gonna be a relationship? And like not using more like partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, kind of more of those committal words too soon. Sure, definitely a thing, but again, this is sometimes where I'm going to see people's attachment styles come in of like, are we being too open to those things? Are we jumping in too quickly? Are we being too hesitant? Nothing wrong with those things, but more so about what does that say? And so you'll definitely start to see kind of maybe how a person navigates things and what their attachment style is a little bit more clearly here. Coming back, there's a conversation with Dylan and Kenzie. Dylan was really trying to share with Kenzie that he's scared, basically, and as I talked about before, and that he's scared. Kenzie has a history of not really being able to receive feedback really well. You know, there's times that she can own things, but more often than not, there's a kind of a defense mechanism or minimizing something. Kenzie was defensive. She said, I don't like how this is being identified as a pattern. Girl, it was. It was a pattern. It happened twice. Again, it's not saying it's a lifelong character or, you know, characterization of who you are as a person, but it's happened now twice. Yes, that is a pattern of behavior in the villa. It's more so when it gets to be like, what does that mean about a person, that gets a little bit more tricky, but it is a pattern. It just is. It's happened more than once. It's starting to show a trend. That's what it is. I really definitely started seeing how, I've talked about this before, especially like Jen, where there are times where you really have to be careful, because it did feel like the girls were flip-flopping a little bit about this. In the past, they have said things like, yeah, I wouldn't trust Kenzie either. Oh, like that's really harmful. Hey, you don't listen to other people. But now we're changing our tune to like, he needs to get over this. He's in a relationship or he's not, or like just basically kind of minimizing Dylan's experience. We do have to be mindful of like, this isn't something we get to hold over our partner forever, but it just happened. It just happened. That's not how that works. And I have to work with my clients all the time on these things of, just because you've apologized for something once does not make it go away. It's going to come up over and over and over again. And whenever, you know, you get a different answer or a different response, or a minimizing or not able to offer empathy or validation, like you're going to basically pressing the reset button. Trust is consistency over time. The story has to be consistent, the reasoning and the consistency of like making that up and showing like consistently safe behavior is how these things get healed. So you're not just going to be able to say sorry and then the next time, oh my God, you're bringing this up again, forgive me or don't. You cannot do that. It's not going to be successful. All it's going to do is make it worse. So yeah, I did not like how the girls were kind of flip-flopping there and then kind of being like, Dylan needs to like, you've already done these things for him and like he needs to get over it. I'm like, it's been like a week, if that. Let's relax. Doesn't work that way. It's a little frustrating, and just again how the outside forces and environment kind of then exacerbate issues rather than actually being able to get legitimate feedback. So Kenzie did end up explaining to him that, oh, she would have chose him from the beginning if she had met him. I think that that's something that people will often say. I think Zach even kind of said the same thing once before to, I can't remember who he was matched up with, but he's like, someone had chose him and he didn't want to choose them, and he was like, I would have chose Kata if Kata was here first, sorry. I like the way that Dylan responded, because he's kind of poking a hole in that argument and said, well, but then why were you exploring Gaul? Ba-bam. Kenzie's thing is trying to sell this kind of story to him that, oh, if I had met you and I wouldn't have talked to anybody else, I would have been locked in. But even when you met him, you were still exploring Gaul. So I think that's something she needs to sit with, because you can definitely see, she's telling herself this story that isn't necessarily based in fact, and it's just more of like a fantasy of what she wants to believe is happening. Does that mean that all of it is fake? No, not saying that at all. But I think, again, this is where a lot of these insecurities come from, because you're saying one thing, but your actions are not aligning. And so even if that wasn't your intention, that doesn't mean that's not the outcome, that you still were talking to other people. Like, yes, if this was the case of, oh, well, you had a relationship with Corbin before I got here and I'm insecure about that, sure, maybe that would land a little bit better. But the fact that you had already met Dylan and then we're still exploring Gaul kind of just blows that totally out of the water. Melanie and Sincere were able to have more conversations. Melanie kind of was able to finally feel heard and safe with Sincere. I think Sincere is finally kind of getting things a little bit and really trying to make amends and is committing to making those amends. So great on him. But like I said before, consistency over time. So if he continues this, things could be great for them. But this is just kind of how this happens. It's like, it's gonna take time, and we have to see if he's able to be consistent about it. But he's on the right path, so we're gonna see where it goes. Kind of coming off of this conversation earlier about meeting somebody and like all the stages of dating. So we had Zach and Kata. They basically were ending the episode where they're deciding to not commit to being boyfriend girlfriend, and they wanted to go with exclusively dating. And their main reason for that is, oh, well, we want to make sure that we try out the real world first just to make sure that it fits, but we could definitely see it going in that direction. Sure, valid reason. However, this definitely feels like it's coming a little bit more from Zach. And if this was completely a one-off thing, that would be different. But pairing it with Zach already making these little comments of right after sex, that'd be crazy. What happens if a bombshell comes in right now? And these kind of little things, it does feel like Zach is a little bit more on the avoidant side, even protecting himself, and kind of just always leaving one foot out the door. Even though we all know that he wants to be fully in, but because he's feeling so insecure, maybe less than, in the shadow of Kata, that he's doing these little things that just, and again, I think this is part of the reason they get voted in the bottom, because it's just really? We're giving into that? Just jump in, man. There's going to be more about this topic, but it's definitely going to be interesting to kind of see how that plays out and where they go in the future. I'll see you in the next episode.